Decor, and this is my Project Zero goal points video. In this goal points project for Project Zero, I wanted to implement something which, in retrospect, was much harder to do. I'm going to explain that right now, and the revisions I had to make, and what my final project is. So in this goal points project, I wanted to implement something called an elastic collision. In an elastic collision, the energy in the velocity and position is conserved. And that means when two bodies collide in an elastic collision, both bodies will use every single bit of energy and translate that into something new, such as a new velocity or a new angle. As you can see in this photo, M1 and M2 collide at different velocities, and they end up, after the collision, splitting into different velocities and different angles. And the purpose of my project was to implement something very similar to this. Something very different that you see in this photo compared to what I had to work with was the angles. In the body system that I worked with in N-body, I was only given the previous angles. So like this and this, I was only given that much. I wasn't given these final angles. So for the purposes of this project, I assume that this angle will be equal to that angle, and this theta would be equal to that theta, if that makes sense. So how did I implement this? With the help of Wikipedia and surprisingly Stack Overflow and a bunch of other physics websites, I was able to find equations and put them and translate them into code to calculate the new velocities for the objects that had collided. In addition, I added a new attribute and a new method and a couple of new methods to the body extreme class, so I could actually use these equations. So for example, one of my methods calculates the new velocity and updates them. It updates the position so that the planets don't collide again, because that's the way my code works. It prevents the program. If you update it, then it will prevent the program from calculating the collision again, which is what I want. Then I added something to check if a set of planets had collided, and a set meaning maximum 2 bodies or 2 planets, something in the system. And I added the new attribute of the radius so that I would be able to tell if 2 bodies were within that radius, and if they were, then they would be classified as a collision. It is very rare to see 2 bodies hit the exact same spot, so I added the element of the radius to allow for an easier access to a collision, if that makes sense. Now I'm going to show you my code in action. Okay, I'm just going to show you my code here. As you know, for the body project, we had to implement something called planets.txt. Here, I did planetsextreme.txt, where I include the attribute of the radius. In addition to that, I actually included an asteroid. An asteroid would allow for the collision to happen, because the collision would not happen if it was just the planets orbiting around each other. As you can see here, just a bunch of numbers, and that was what I used to create a new body extreme object for each. Now I'm going to show you in action. I've compiled everything. Okay, let's see. There we go. That collision happened. So I'm going to pause it right here. And let's scroll up to where the collision actually happened. I wrote a line in my code so that it printed out when 2 planets had collided. And it should be around here somewhere. Yeah. As you can see here, the word collided means 2 planets collided. And as you could see in the demonstration, it was the Earth and the asteroid. And as you can see here, this is the X position and Y position for each, and since they were well within the same radius, I updated it, and I actually got a very different radius and a very different velocity. As you can see here, from Earth, the x position was -7 times to the power of 10, whereas here it was 8 to the power of 18. And then for asteroid, I got -1.2 to the power of 11 before collision, and after the collision, it ended up being 8 times 10 to the power of 18. It ended up kind of going in the same direction, it looks like. Yeah. And that is basically what I tried to implement. I hope you liked it.